So what are the rules of writing for you that are going to help make you more productive? Hey, everybody, it's Ricki Heller from rickiheller.com. I'm a book coach, writer, and editor, and I help you to finally write your book, get those words on the page so that you can share your message with the world. So today I want to pick up with what I started last time, which is the novelist Colm Toibin's 10 Rules of Writing. And he talks about what he sees as the 10 rules to help you be a better writer. And some of them are a little tongue in cheek. That's okay. I'm going to tell you my interpretation because he's talking about fiction. And I want to tell you how this relates to nonfiction, how we can use these rules to help make ourselves better writers. And as I said last time, I would love to hear from you. If you have other options, other ideas, put them in the comments. Let's hear all of your little tricks and tips and strategies. Tongue twister there, couldn't get that out. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over the first 5 for you, just as a quick review from last time. So finish everything you start, and I talk about these in the previous video. Get on with it. Stay in your mental pajamas all day. Stop feeling sorry for yourself, and no alcohol, drugs, or sex while working. Okay, so let's look at his second set of 5 tips. He had 10 altogether. And I'm going to talk about how I see those relating to those of us who are doing nonfiction writing. So his number 6 tip is to work all morning, take a break for lunch, work all afternoon till dinner, watch the news at 6 p.m., work until bed, and maybe listen to a little music at night, preferably Schubert in his mind. So what does that really mean? Well, what he's really talking about is a work ethic. And I'm just going to interject here and say the one thing I absolutely disagree with is watch the news at 6. I haven't watched mainstream news or really any news shows for years. I think it's much better for your mental health. And you'd be surprised how you can keep up on what's going on in the world even without actually watching the news. So that's optional for you if you want to watch the news at 6. But really what he's talking about in that point is having a pattern to what you do and having a work ethic. So for many of us who are not full-time writers like he is, obviously we cannot do that, but you can have a set writing time and you can have a schedule and you can say, I'm going to write every weekday, for instance. So when I first started my Substack column, it was really as a means for me to kind of write the first draft of a book I want to work on called Be the Dog. And it's a dog stories. Like, if you know me, you know I'm dog crazy. So I have a whole year's worth of stories, 1 per week. And it's around the positive qualities that my dogs demonstrate and how I think we could be better people if we adopt some of those. And I had set down this schedule that I wanted to do 52 columns in a year. And I ended up doing 58 because there were just a few other things. There were some that were unanticipated stories or whatever. But I had a schedule where every morning, and I've stuck to that since then, I set aside an hour. Now, like, let's be realistic. Not everybody can do that, number 1. Number 2, it doesn't always happen that you have the full hour. And that's okay. I didn't. There were days where I had 10 minutes. I sat down for 10 minutes. But within that year, I did manage to write 58 columns, which I published 1 per week. So like I said, it was a little bit more than a year. But that's the power of structure and habit and having that work ethic. So that's something that's really important that you want to work out for yourself so you can be consistent in your writing. His point number 7, if you have to read to yourself, then read I guess if you have to read to cheer yourself up, read biographies of writers who went insane. So what's the real point there? Well, I laughed when I read that. So part of it is he's being facetious a little bit. He's being funny. You know, if I'm going to cheer myself up and I read about an insane writer, of course I'll feel better. But what he's really saying there, he's talking about how comparisons can be really negative. And if we are reading other people and it's depressing us because we feel like, oh, I'm never going to be as good of a writer, that's not helpful to you. So not necessarily do you want to read people who write in ways that are worse than the way you write. You don't want to read bad writers or whatever, but you want to find something that's going to cheer yourself up. I would try to find something that made me laugh. Would it mean reading somebody about somebody who went insane? Probably not. But, anything that you can find that lifts your spirits, use that reading time for good rather than for a bad impact on your own mental state and your own sense of who you are as a writer. So let's always try to find something that uplifts us when we read. Number 8 is on Saturdays, you can watch an old movie, preferably a Berkman film. That's his particular bent, right? And I think the point he's making there is nobody does well if all they ever do is work, right? Saturdays, you can take off, have some fun, weekends. I've tried to implement a schedule where I don't work at night and I don't work on weekends. Again, am I 100% successful? No, I do work at night. I just recently finished a huge editing project. I had a very firm deadline. I ended up working several evenings the week before. That's not unusual, but that's fine. Sometimes you're going to do that, sometimes you're not, but you need to schedule in downtime. You need to schedule in fun time. You need to schedule in time where your brain gets to relax, because studies have shown that creativity tends to flourish when we have rest time, when we have time where our brains are not focused on anything specific. That's why we tend to get so many great ideas in the shower, or just as we're falling asleep, or while we're driving alone in the car, because our brains have that freedom to go blank and to wander. So that would be how I would interpret that tip, is give yourself some off time, give yourself some fun time. Number 9 is no going to London. Now, what does he mean by that? I think that relates back to a previous point that we talked about, which is trying not to give yourself distractions, and also trying not to give yourself anything negative in terms of mental stimulation. When you're writing, you don't want to be constantly comparing yourself to people who you think are better writers than you. You don't want to be comparing the trajectory of your history as a writer or your path as a writer with those of people who are going to make you feel inferior. You want to surround yourself with positive people, positive ideas, positive things, and not compare yourself in a negative way to other writers. And then his final point is no going anywhere else either. So again, he's talking about that whole concept of not distracting yourself while you're working, staying within your lane, focusing on what you can do, finding ways to keep your mental state as positive as possible. And I'm going to add something that is discussed quite often in business, but I think is so important in writing too. And that's the concept of community. So I'm going to add an 11th to his, which is, if you can find a community of people who are also writers, or who are aspiring writers, who are there to support you and give you positive feedback and are like you, going through along a similar journey, there's nothing that's greater than that. I'm witnessing this now in live terms in the Write Together program that I'm working through with my clients. We have a beta program going where 6 women are going through this Write Together program, where we actually, and I'm going to say 7 because I'm one of them, where we sit down and write our books together. And it's filled with a little bit of lessons, a little bit of discussion, a little bit of feedback. And I'm doing some live editing for them as we work through our writing. And I can just see the power of community and the synergy between the women, where our ideas are elevated by each other. We come up with more ideas because of each other. Our creativity increases because we're being surrounded by these creative minds in process. So if you can find a community, that would be great too. All right, so I'm just going to review the final 6 points here again. Working through the day, that's all around the concept of have a work ethic, have a schedule that you follow. Do not compare yourself to others in any way that's going to be negative or bring down your sense of yourself as a writer or your mood as a writer. Better to compare yourself, as he said, with people who are going to lift you up. Read things that are going to put you in a good mood. Read things that are going to take you away from that inner critic. Give yourself some fun time. Give yourself some off time. Have that mental space for yourself. And really, really work at avoiding distractions and being absolutely focused when you do your work. And finally, find a community of like-minded people you can surround yourself with who will lift you up and help you on your journey. So thanks to Colm Toibin for those, and I hope those were helpful for you too. If you'd like more weekly tips and stories about writing, and also, like I say every week, some adorable dog pics on occasion, please subscribe to my newsletter at rickiheller.com/subscribe. Love to see you there. Love to share more with you there. All right, everybody. Hope you have a great week. Hope that was helpful. And I'll see you next time.